And before this video begins, I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. Doctor Who is finally back. It's like Christmas for fans. Well, actually, Christmas is like Christmas for Doctor Who fans, so maybe that analogy wasn't very good, but so was this episode. Not the best, but good enough to get the point across. Yes, after months and months of waiting, Series 14 has finally started at midnight UK time. So I'm recording this at like 5 AM and I'm very tired. Space Babies is the latest exciting adventure in the Boss Baby cinematic universe, seeing the 15th Doctor and new companion Ruby Sunday on their first adventure in the TARDIS, travelling to a distant space station which is a baby farm plagued by a sinister monster. As the first non-special episode of this new RTD2 era and Series 14, Space Babies had a lot to live up to. So did it make a good first impression and start the series off in style? Or does it put the dumb in dumb fun? Well, as always, that's what I'm here to find out. So get ready for a trip to Pacifico del Rio and try not to step on any butterflies, because it's time to take a deep dive into Space Babies. Of course, if you need to be caught up, The Church on Ruby Road was the 2023 Christmas special and saw the Doctor crash into the life of Ruby Sunday, saving her from goblins and inviting her to become a companion at the end. Space Babies picks right back up from that ending, seeing the Doctor give Ruby a crash course in basic Doctor Who lore. It's all the kind of stuff you usually expect from a companion's first outing, essentially introducing any new viewers to Doctor Who as a show and all the concepts it relies upon, like the TARDIS and the Doctor being a Time Lord. I think it's all handled well here. It's smooth and non-obstructive. It doesn't feel like the big exposition dump it actually is. They also do something I really like, and that's travelling back to dinosaur times, since the Doctor wants to prove to Ruby that the TARDIS can actually time travel. Honestly, I'm still so surprised it took this long for Doctor Who to go to the dinosaur age on screen. Like, the only times we did get to see dinosaurs was out of their own time period. So it's about time we saw it as it really was. The visuals look incredible here. It's an amazing spectacle to open the episode. The music swells up really nicely and you just have this sprawling vista filled with dinosaurs. Of course, the Brachiosaurus does look a little bit Star Wars Special Edition, but on the whole, it's a gorgeous looking scene. And it's extra special because they actually made Wyoming sound interesting. Another thing I love about this opening is how it plays with the idea of time paradoxes and changing history, since Ruby accidentally steps on a butterfly and turns into an alien with a completely different personality. This general idea has obviously been a staple of time travel sci-fi, and even Doctor Who has joked about it before in Thin Ice, with Bill worried about doing this exact thing.
I'm being serious.
Yeah, so is Pete.
Not only does this butterfly effect joke create a fun and playful moment, it also helps to further establish the rules of time travel and introduce things like this to new viewers, much like the opening as a whole does. It's an illustration of the kinds of risks the Doctor and his companions take every time they travel to the past. I like the dedication to the bit as well, with Ruby having a very detailed lizard costume made from prosthetics. Like, she spent hours and hours in the makeup department for this joke that lasts about a minute. It's great stuff, and Millie Gibson kills it as this alternate lizard form Ruby. Of course, the Doctor quickly resuscitates the little butterfly, and history continues with barely a feather ruffled, so they restore the status quo pretty quickly. Although I already expect that the writers at Big Finish are salivating at the idea of a box set with Rubathon Blue of the 57th Hemisphere hatchlings. She'll probably meet River Song and Jackie Tyler and go to Peladon with the 8th Doctor, you know what they're like. Now that the Doctor has introduced Ruby to the ability to travel to the past, it's only natural she chooses the future next, which is a common formula in the show. Especially in the first Davis era. Rose went to the future, then the past, Martha went to the past, then the future, Donna did the same, and then Amy went to the future then the past. You get the idea. Space Babies uses the same kind of structure but within one episode, although there is the historical Devil's Cord right after it. I do like this quick 1-2 punch of settings quickly establishing the spectrum of Doctor Who. It continues the idea of this episode being a whirlwind introduction showing you everything you need to know, just like the quick explanation of everything being in English, which is always something new fans tend to find confusing, so it's great to just get it out of the way early here. here. The new friends soon find themselves on board a spaceship orbiting the distant planet Pacifico del Rio. Again, the visuals here are phenomenal, a great modern update to that scene at the beginning of The End of the World. The Doctor gives this really beautiful, rousing speech about how free he is, and he keeps going for days like these and sights like these. It's such an optimistic moment with great scoring by Murray Gold. It's basically the Doctor in a nutshell, his mission statement. He doesn't have a home, he doesn't have a purpose, but he isn't tied down. He's free to explore and see everything, especially through the eyes of his companion. That little wrinkle reminds me a lot of one of the Meanwhile in the TARDIS minisodes from Series 5, where the 11th Doctor explains that he's so old he's basically seen everything exciting there is to see, but by taking Amy with him, he's able to experience it through her eyes, and it's like the first time all over again, which is really sweet, and Ncuti Gatwa's enthusiastic delivery of the speech really helps it thrive and show how good he can be as the Doctor.
Sometimes it looks even better through your eyes.
I think Ruby and the Doctor have some fantastic chemistry throughout the episode. It's a real showcase for their relationship, as these very excited and enthusiastic friends just having a laugh about it all with a lot of energy. They have some great moments of back and forth banter, and it really feels fresh and fun to have a companion pairing like this. I feel like the 15th Doctor is one of the most energetic and youthful incarnations of the Doctor. He reminds me a lot of the 11th Doctor in that regard. He has a lot of exuberance and moments of childish playfulness, but there's also a deeper loneliness and sense of hurt underneath, like we get a glimpse of throughout this episode, especially with his reassuring speech to the baby Poppy, which indicates a level of inner vulnerability below his charismatic exterior. 15 is obviously the highlight of this episode, as we learn more about him and his personality, but Ruby also has a solid first outing too. She struggled a bit in Church on Ruby Road, feeling like a promising yet somewhat hollow and bland character at points, but Space Babies really gives her a lot more emotion and quality to work with. More of her personality definitely shines through in this episode, a much more distinct character with moments like her anger at being covered in bogey juice as the Doctor laughs at her misfortune, something that makes her feel real and endearing, along with further strengthening the pair's quality as a duo. Obviously Ruby spends most of the episode asking questions on behalf of the audience, but she does get a decent amount to do, acting as a bit of a motherly figure to these babies due to her own experiences fostering with her mum, and she's much more of a well-rounded character as she works out the truth of the bogeyman, coming to conclusions the Doctor overlooked. Ruby also has a real sense of determined bravery as she's immediately willing to jump into action against the bogeyman to protect the baby Eric, showing that distinctive companion trait of jumping into danger head first. So I think it's a good showcase for both the 15th Doctor and Ruby. It turns out this space station is a futuristic baby farm, growing babies in test tubes for a future human colony. I find this quite an interesting sci-fi concept for the episode to explore, how future humans can just grow babies and then colonists can adopt them just to get the ball rolling on establishing a civilization. It allows for a rapid human development, giving a colony a better chance to establish things like infrastructure and ensure long-term viability. Of course, there is a sense of controversy to such an approach despite being a potentially necessary solution for survival. There's the ethical questions of things like consent, and the awkward implications of potential eugenics, since obviously colonists would want babies with desirable traits and not any with genetic issues or disabilities, which, yeah, it's kind of not good. I was worried this episode would get very politically charged with a lot of pro-life versus pro-choice abortion birth control stuff, which would have just been a minefield like we saw with Kill the Moon. But luckily it's not really a prominent part of the story. It's not all political commentary. It instead just focuses on fun vibes and the weirdness of all these babies, with those implications and political issues instead an undercurrent you can choose to unpack and engage with or not. I do also appreciate how the episode ties into the wider story of Ruby Sunday not knowing her biological parents, as established in the Christmas special. There's a sense of coincidence to their first adventure being a place full of these children, just like her, and I like how it continues to build up and explore the mystery surrounding her as part of the wider story arc, just reminding you it's there without being too over the top about it all. It reminds me a bit of Series 9, where the hybrid arc was represented by the Doctor and Clara often encountering hybrids in their adventures, so it's a good way to incorporate the series arc within the setting and narrative of Space Babies, even if it does mean we have to suffer toilet humour and talking baby abominations. Yes, let's talk about the titular Space Babies, who are creepy, uncanny valley look who's talking style eldritch entities that have developed into intellectual maturity despite still being babies, because of something going wrong with the baby farm systems. It's kind of a contrived way of just making them able to talk. I don't like the babies in this episode. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of toilet humour and bodily fluid stuff that's pretty lowbrow and cheap if you ask me. These babies are manning the ship all by themselves, which is an interesting and surreal hook, but the insistence on everything being goofy comedy kind of just makes them feel like the weak link of the entire story. No wonder the funding was cut and nobody wants to adopt all these PG-rated Stewie Griffins. I don't find babies adorable like a lot of people do, so any attempts at making them all cutesy just completely falls flat for me. I think it's a pretty ballsy move to make this your big episode premiere. I know in America they re-released Church on Ruby Road to essentially make that episode 1, but imagine hearing all this hype about this Doctor Who show that's amazing, with loads of incredible characters, monsters and storytelling, only to be immediately confronted with these talking, pooping babies. It's not exactly the best showcase of Doctor Who's quality, I mean come on. Aboard this space station is the Nanny system, an Alexa-like system run by Jocelyn, the only adult left on the ship because everyone else quit out of protest, leaving this on-site accountant stuck in the role of keeping the station running and basically playing Five Nights at Freddy's over here in a storage cupboard that keeps sparking and breaking. Jocelyn's quite an interesting character because of how isolated and abandoned she is, confined to a small space, just like we saw with Vinda in Series 13, a feeling of loneliness that would drive most people insane. The thing that keeps Jocelyn going is her immense care and loyalty to the babies because she wants to protect them, which the Doctor understands and respects. Jocelyn knows that the station is slowly running out of oxygen and power, but she doesn't want to see the babies die and will even sacrifice herself if need be. This fear of seeing the babies die reminds me a lot of the Doctor's own fear of his companions dying, since humans are like mayflies compared to him and his long life, something we've seen time and time again. I do think Jocelyn is a welcome character in such a story because she's more of a gritty, down-to-earth character whose constant swearing is always blocked by the nanny system she operates and speaks through. She really helps prop the episode up and feels like a welcome, serious presence amidst all this space baby stupidity. Whilst exploring the space station and its basement, the Doctor and Ruby come across the sinister, terrifying Bogeyman, the villain of the piece. I love the initial introduction to the Bogeyman, appearing in the shadows of the hallway, almost like something out of a horror movie. When this clip was shown after Church on Ruby Road, I really thought the whole tone of the episode would be very horror-centric, so it was admittedly a shame to find out it's mainly a comedy episode and the Bogeyman is a bit of an afterthought. There are some great jump scare moments throughout as the Bogeyman chases the protagonist. It's definitely an intimidating presence. It just feels like there's a bit of a tonal disconnect there with such a scary monster being part of an overtly comedic and non-serious episode. The Bogeyman has an absolutely incredible design, this hulking, slimy beast with sharp teeth and long, spindly fingers. It really does feel like something out of a nightmare, along with its mouth opening like a Demogorgon from Stranger Things. It's a very striking Doctor Who monster, and it continues to hint towards that more fantasy-centric approach Davis intends for his new era of the show. After all, the name Bogeyman speaks for itself. Indeed, the Bogeyman's name and design is very much designed to intentionally reflect that of the mythical creature from European history. And yes, that's Bogeyman, not Boogeyman for you Americans. The Bogeyman is a mythical creature adults use to scare their kids into behaving, since if you don't behave, the big bad Bogeyman will get you. The Bogeyman from Space Baby shares a lot of visual similarities with the claws and sharp teeth, although Bogeymen often have different character traits ranging from protecting the innocent to stealing and eating children. Just a little bit of a difference between them. The reason there are so many similarities between the mythical creature and the antagonist of Space Babies is because they're quite literally one and the same. Indeed, there's a big twist in the episode, with the reveal that the ship is able to bring ideas to life, with the Bogeyman being the physical manifestation of a bedtime story for all the babies. It kind of reminds me a bit of Can You Hear Me from Series 12, where the immortal god Zelin created the Chagaska creature from a woman's nightmares, turning it into a physical creature and threat despite it not actually existing in the first place. Nightmares tap into our primal fears and deepest anxieties, so when they manifest in reality like this, it feels like a personalised horror and there's a sense of psychological torment. Most people in the UK and Europe have grown up with these tales of bogeymen, so it being the villain of this story feels quite relatable. It's an interesting setup for the villain, this creature ripped straight from the nightmares of babies. After saving the baby Eric from the terrifying bogeyman thanks to the convenient intervention of the flamethrower wielding babies, the Doctor and Ruby work out that the education system has broken and created this horrible monster out of literal bogies and given it sentience in a very typical misunderstood monster tech gone wrong narrative. To try and protect the kids from this terrifying creature, Jocelyn uses her Five Nights at Freddy's computer systems to trap the bogeyman in an airlock to suck it out into space, which looks horrific by the way, but not really how you want to go. However, because of all the machine shenanigans making the bogeyman a sentient being that's just misunderstood, the Doctor desperately pleads for Jocelyn not to kill it. I do appreciate that they don't let him use the sonic screwdriver since it's plugged into the systems. I was worried it would be another case of the Doctor just waving around the sonic to save the day again. But instead of that, they have him take a big risk to sacrifice himself and shut the airlock by hand, even if it could kill him. A very Doctor-like way to react to such a desperate situation. However, I'm not so sure about how heavy-handed it is in highlighting that the bogeyman is unique like the Doctor. I love the idea, it's a great implication similar to the Star Beast, but I don't think it needed the literal flashbacks to earlier in the same episode to prove the point, in case you somehow didn't have the basic media literacy to pick up on it naturally. You'd have thought Davis would have learned his lesson from the Series 3 finale, which did the exact same thing of using flashbacks to hammer it over your head. Like, come on, give us something new here. And that kind of reminds me, not much of this episode really does anything new, you know, it's just a bit of the end of the world here, the star whale here, and maybe some other stuff spattered in there. It doesn't really feel like it's doing anything new, apart from talking, pooping babies, I guess. Now that the bogeyman has been saved and turned into a pet dog somehow, there's a decently long epilogue dissecting everything that just happened, with Jocelyn owning up to her mistakes and finally embracing the kids she was hiding from. However, I really don't like the ultimate solution to the baby's home situation being a fart engine. Yes, taking inspiration from the classic Rupert Grint blockbuster Thunderpants, the Doctor weaponizes the power of farts and poop to propel the space station all the way to another planet to rehome the babies. I guess now we know how the Death Star got around. Oh my god, what are we doing here? Yeah, this whole resolution is so stupid and not even in Doctor Who's usual fun and camp way. It just reeks of lazy writing and the absolute bottom of the barrel lowbrow humour. That being said, we do then get a lovely scene as the Doctor gives Ruby a TARDIS key on her own, formally inviting her aboard as a proper fully fledged full-time companion and not just a one-off treat. I love their enthusiasm at this. They really do feel like friends excited to go out on all these new adventures together, so it's a really optimistic and wonderful ending for the episode as the TARDIS bursts back into Ruby's flat and reunites her with her family. However, there are some good serious notes from this ending, with the Doctor telling Ruby he can't ever take her back to that church because of the same paradoxical risks illustrated by the butterfly at the beginning. The story arc of Ruby's mysterious origin is handled well in this episode, like a scene early on where the Doctor's memory of Ruby Road changes, the snow descending on him and Ruby in a very ominous way, almost like the snow is following Ruby. It's the same at the end of the episode where the Doctor scans his new companion to try and find answers, only for that snow to once again descend within the TARDIS itself, leaving us with even more questions and a sense of a big mystery, which is a fascinating tease to leave us on, and I can't wait to find out more. Space Babies is a weird episode. It has a lot of highs and a lot of lows, meaning it settles somewhere in the middle. It's definitely a gorgeous episode visually with the dinosaur time vista and the space station view, but even the space station set design is fantastic. There are all these sleek white futuristic walls, but they're covered in the doodles of the babies, creating a unique visual style production designer Phil Simms wanted to resemble a pediatric ward. The dark green corridors of the bogeyman's lair is a great sinister contrast, helping to illustrate the reassuring light of the upper floors compared to the dark and terrifying basement full of fear. The bogeyman is a great villain, especially as a practical effect costume, looking excellent, and it's definitely the kind of monster that would give younger viewers nightmares. However, the episode does feel a little tonally off when it mixes the terror of the bogeyman with the silly and goofy antics of all the space baby stuff. I know they tied the two things together well, explaining the bogeyman in a nice way, but it just felt a bit confused as to what vibe it wanted to go for. I really didn't care for the space baby shenanigans, and that's obviously the main hook for the episode, so it felt a bit flat for me. It might be the sleep deprivation, but I'm feeling generous enough to actually give space babies a B rank. Hey, Future Harbo here, and yeah, I definitely was being way too generous. This is more like a C. I'm giving this a C, not a B. It doesn't get a B anymore. It didn't age very well when I was, working on editing it, and I thought more of it, so yeah, final score is a C. It's definitely a middle-of-the-road episode that feels quite average, but alongside the incredible Bogeyman design and directing, the enthusiastic acting of Shooter Gatwa and Millie Gibson really props it up and carries the episode to a major extent. The 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunday are already truly a joy to watch, and I already love them as a duo so much. Their banter and shared character moments really make Space Babies worth watching, along with introducing viewers to the fundamentals of Doctor Who in a light and pacey way, which makes it a good opener and first time outing for a new companion. I'm just not sure if it was the right episode to get new viewers to actually stick around, considering all the farting babies and childish comedy. Oh, and before I go to get some much earned sleep, don't think I didn't notice Russell T Davies straight up ripping himself off with that phone call scene. This is almost a one-to-one copy of the scene with Rose in End of the World. It's so creatively lazy, and it kind of concerns me that almost 20 years later he hasn't thought of a different way to write that type of scene. But what did you think of Space Babies? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Was it a ship-propelling fart of an episode? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Oh wait, there's another one already out. Guess I'll do a longer shift. And I'd just like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Diamond level patron Glenna Clark, my Platinum level patrons Matthew Burns and Maximilian Foreman, and all my Gold level patrons Daniel Shillito, Francois Nako Line Vortex, Lee Marie Farrell, Thomas R, and Thomas Price. Thank you so much for your support.